Hey everyone, welcome to the Gwinnett Business Breakfast. We're so honored that you continue to watch these, and we've heard great feedback in terms of how our guests have added value to you and your organization and your business, and today will be no exception. I'm so honored to have my very good friend David Farmer. David is the VP of Restaurant Experience at Chick-fil-A. Maybe you've heard of Chick-fil-A, and I've known David for over 23 years. We used to work together when I worked on staff at Chick-fil-A. When I left 17 years ago, he and I continued to remain great friends, and he and his wife Mallory have incredible kids, and David is one of the sharpest and brightest people that I've ever been around. So when the virus hit and all this was going on, and Chick-fil-A, like all of us, had to adjust, as we began to move through this, the organization asked David to begin looking through and planning, how are we going to start over? How are we going to re-enter into this new world? So David was tasked with that opportunity, and he shared with me some of the things and some of the principles and some of the strategies that he began and the team began to think through that is ultimately now leading Chick-fil-A to re-entering. And now they're, and as you'll hear some details about what they're doing with their mall stores and what they're doing with dining rooms and all of that, you'll hear more about that. So if you're just interested in Chick-fil-A, you're going to find this interview fascinating. But at the same time, I think what you'll discover is that David's going to provide some principles and some strategies that you and I can implement in our organizations as well. Now, the other great thing is that our team has already gone and compiled the notes for this, and you can get the notes if you'll just text GC Breakfast to 313131. GC Breakfast to 313131. But I would encourage you, go ahead, listen to David's interview, then text that, and you'll get our team's recap of the notes. But without further ado, here's David Farmer with Chick-fil-A and Eat More Chicken. So David, so great to see you, buddy.
Great to be with you, Jeff. In fact, the irony is, as much as we like to connect, it's hard sometimes, but we've had an easier time doing it during this crisis via Zoom than we have ever before, I believe.
We figured out Zoom, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And, so, man, it's great to see you. Your world, if we go back to the first part of the year, you and I, your wife Mallory and Wendy and I were on a cruise ship, the Chick-fil-A cruise ship, and little did we know that here we would be. So a lot has changed. First of all, I'm just glad we got through the cruise, right?
I know we had, if you're listening to this, we do this every year. We have an annual business meeting. It's kind of like part business, part family reunion at Chick-fil-A. It's just been a tradition for decades. And believe it or not, this year we took the whole organization on 2 huge cruise ships. And this was in February.
Right.
To think that every Chick-fil-A operator in the chain was on one of these ships along with our staff, and Jeff was there because he was actually our closing keynote speaker. And but wow, that's scary to think that we could have been adrift at sea for months, not allowed off those ships.
Yeah. But between then and now, what massive change that we've been through. And I wanted to talk to David about that. David, obviously, I want you to tell everyone your background and how long you've been at Chick-fil-A. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk to David about this is because the organization has really tapped him and some of his team members to help lead the organization, kind of frame the organization forward in terms of re-entry. But before we go there, David, tell us your history at Chick-fil-A and then ultimately lead us to what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, I'm a native Atlantan. In fact, I can remember when Scott Hudgens built Gwinnett Place Mall. How about that? And that's long before, that's the old mall in Gwinnett at this point. So it's amazing to see how Gwinnett County has grown, and definitely thrilled to see what's happened up in your stretch of the woods, Jeff, with the church. Of course, we've got Brad Williams and Chick-fil-A right down the road at Moore Road. So love visiting up in your area. But I'm a native Atlantan. When I actually went to school at Georgia Tech, and while there got an internship with Chick-fil-A. And so I've spent about 3 decades now with Chick-fil-A as the organization has morphed and grown and gone from kind of an Atlanta-based regional brand to really a national brand now. And we're starting to stick our toe in the water to go outside of the U.S. with some stores open in Canada, kind of looking beyond. So sort of grown up in the business, predominantly in a marketing role, but that's changed so much. I mean, when I first came, what was the internet? None of that existed. Jeff was there. He remembers. Right. We did things the old school way. But the business has grown, and it's it's really remarkable how it's transformed. So there's so much technology involved in what we do. And honestly, that has been a savior to us during this period of the pandemic as well. But my role now involves a lot of work on the restaurant experience, the menu we offer, the service and hospitality, how we run drive-thrus, how we create systems to enable us to keep up with the volume that we get in our restaurants. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of challenge, but our world got turned upside down that second week in March when things started to hit. We had to react quickly, and it sort of began with a decision that we had to close our dining rooms.
Mm-hmm. So back to that. So, we get off the cruise ship. We starting to hear some cruises. The cruise ships are like, we're not going to let people off the cruise. And they're like, wait, this thing's building. So fast forward to, I think you get an email, right, that says, don't come back to the office, or tell us about that.
Yeah. After we got back, it was the second week of March. I had actually gone to visit some operators in Charlotte, North Carolina, who were testing some things with us. Monday and Tuesday, the second week of March, went to the office, which is down near the Atlanta airport. Wednesday, and was leaving to go home, and I got a text message that says, don't come back. We're going to test shutting the campus down and see how it works to work virtually. And we thought that was just going to be Thursday and Friday of that week. I've not been back to the campus since.
Wow.
And it looks like we're going to keep, we are letting some people back onto campus if they have a critical need to go back and they have to go through some screening. But we're probably not going to open it back up. We know at the earliest, it'll be the end of September. So that is just, you talk about everything being, I've been driving to the campus for decades. So we've all transitioned to working from home. We've had to learn new skills, learn how to use new tools. It's been fascinating too, because there's been surprisingly some real good that's come out of it. And there's been some real challenge that's come out of that as well.
Obviously, it's impacted the business with so many mall stores. How many mall stores do you have now?
A little under 300. We started just as a mall business. It's a smaller part of the portfolio, but that's clearly the part of the business where we're struggling the most. In malls in general, they're trying to find their way. You see that even in Gwinnett County, and so for our mall operators, those are the ones we've really had to rally around and help the most. It's fascinating. They're very innovative. So they've taken their restaurant in the mall and worked with their landlord to figure out how they can run kind of a drive-through on the curb and do delivery out of that mall. And that's really helped. But they're starting to open back up. We've kept our freestanding restaurants open, but not with dining room service. Mm-hmm. It's mostly been outside the restaurant, drive-through, people pulling up and do curbside pickup, or our delivery business has grown a lot. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what I learned from that is those are things we've been investing in for a while. And you make these investments and you don't always know how they're going to pay off, when they're going to pay off. But boy, you get to a point like this, and who would have ever seen this coming? And we're so grateful for those investments, because that is actually what has sustained us. 95% of our business has been through some of those channels that we've been investing in over the last few years. And so we're grateful for that.
So you were able to, and graciously able to, talk to our staff about kind of what you're thinking moving forward, because once the whole world kind of shakes a little bit, and then we got to figure out the mall, we got to figure out delivery, you got to figure out closing the dining room. So once you kind of got stable on that, then it was like, okay, once we kind of re-enter this new world, how are things going to go? How are things going to be? So what are some ways and strategies you've thought of? Because as the organization came to you and said, hey, help us lead us to this new, I don't necessarily like the phrase new normal, but lead us out of this into this season. What were some things that you thought about, or some strategies and principles that you thought about to help guide you and Chick-fil-A?
Well, I may begin by just talking about context. When all this hit, just think back, there was so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
We didn't know where this was going, or how long it was going to last, or how bad it was going to be. And I could almost feel this anxiety and stress in my system that was just sort of persistent, just always there. We started to get comfortable with it. We've been in it now several months, so it doesn't feel quite so strange. But we had to begin by just saying, you know what, we just don't know what the future looks like right now. So we suspended our entire plan and said, it's out the window. We're going to stop, go back to a blank sheet of paper, and we're going to think about this future in 3 phases. We called it the response. We are right now in response mode, responding to the coronavirus crisis. We then said there will come a day when we're going to get back into re-entry, and then we'll look longer term at a long-term recovery, which is probably where the new normal phrase you reference comes into play. I would say the good news is for us, and this may not be the same for everybody, and it can differ even within our own system, but we started to move into re-entry even sooner than we thought as you start to see businesses opening back up. Now, granted, malls are behind other restaurants, but that was good. So we worked ahead. We had one group that was so just consumed by all the day-to-day. We had to change so many operating procedures. Constantly, every day. If you were a Chick-fil-A operator, you had to be on your toes to just kind of catch all this. While one group is working on that, we need another group that's looking out, thinking about what will it look like when businesses start to open up. And then a third group thinking, what are the long-term implications associated with COVID? And so the good news is we entered into re-entry earlier. We're still there. We have not opened everything back up. In fact, we're going really slow on opening up dining rooms. Even where we have permission to do that, we're not doing it. We're only testing it in a few restaurants right now because we want to get that right. We also established principles. So one of the ways I would describe this, we talked about principles, priorities, and practices. And that is a way to develop plans. So principles are what is it that really matters? And for us, we said, well, number one principle in this time has to be safety of our customers, safety of our team. So that has to govern as you filter through options. And then you can work your way to lower level priorities. That will then inform what those priorities need to be. Where do you want to spend your time, energy, and resources? And then you start to get into some of the tactical execution. So that framework helped us and continues to help us as we can. This is an evolution, and we're still evolving as we make our way back to what new normal will look like.
That's great. And we're in a very similar situation. And we, as a church, the president said we could open up because we're, essential. But we don't feel like we can do that to be the kind of church we want to be with the number of people that we're dealing with. So I think it's helpful. It's an important leadership principle. What are your principles and values, and how can they guide you forward in this season?
So make a comment there.
Absolutely.
I think about the church and the way that you guys invested in a lot of innovation and technology early. You're very comfortable with video as an example. Even this Zoom broadcast is an example. You probably never knew to what degree. You didn't know at the beginning of the year you were going to be as dependent upon it as you ended up becoming
right.
within 3 months. So that's a parallel to what we've experienced at Chick-fil-A as we've invested in things like the drive-through, our Chick-fil-A One app, delivery services. We knew it was important, never knew it would play out like it's playing out right now.
I've told pastors recently at a online conference, I bet you can finish this sentence with, I never thought I would, whatever, because I could answer it. I never thought I would preach a sermon from my dining room, but I've preached plenty of sermons from my dining room right now because, when we all got shut down, that's how I could get messages and information out. You talk about safety. I think this is an important point because in this season, I've heard you and other leaders say cash is king, and Dave Ramsey said cash is king. And we believe that as well. And yet you also made a sizable investment from a safety standpoint at the drive-thrus by these hand washing stations. Yeah. So help us understand cash is king, and we're going to spend some cash.
Yeah, so we did have to just kind of lock down all of our spending at first because we just really had no idea what we were looking at. And we knew that I say cash is kind of like oxygen. You got to have it to breathe. And so for us to be a viable business and make it through this and be able to support the operators that are really struggling, there's a lot of things we thought we were going to do we can't do anymore. And so we shut a lot of spending down. But we did a case study, and we looked back at prior crises like the Great Recession, even what happened at 9/11 back in 2001, and figured out what kind of organizations came through those and thrived. And we found a really interesting formula. The businesses that did the best did two things. They cut back everywhere they could, kind of to the cash is king, let's preserve cash concept. But they didn't just do that. They made strategic, targeted investments in areas that were going to be critically important going forward. And that might be a different agenda than what was important last week, because there's this massive intervention that has changed the world. And so we did both. We had to decide, where do we invest in things that are different? So as you referenced, it didn't mean we wouldn't spend money on anything. It meant we had to spend money on the right things. And so we worked hard and fast to equip restaurants with things they'd never had before, like a hand washing station out in the drive-thru. We purchased plexiglass to help us as we reopen dining rooms, whether we have to use that on the counter or in between booths or at the drive-thru window. Just all kinds of things that we need. And we're making investments in things like all things digital, delivery. How do we continue to enhance the app? Because it's important. So it doesn't mean don't spend on anything. You just need to be really discerning to spend on the things that are going to matter in this new normal.
That's great. So identify your principles. So what was the next step for you?
Well, as I mentioned, we go through these phases, and I think we have moved out of just response phase. We're now working on reentry, and you almost have to multitask.
Right.
But clearly, you talked about the safety of our people and our customers was number one. Then you have to get into, let's maintain liquidity. Let's make strategic investments. But interestingly enough, another one is, how do we just check in and make sure everybody's doing okay? Because culture is a big part of this, and you can relate to this. Everything's changed regarding the culture of the organization.
Right.
We are finding that when we use a lot of the virtual meeting technology, actually it's really efficient. So that's some of the good. And I do feel like I actually spend more time with a smaller set of people. But there's a lot of people that I don't just bump into anymore at lunch or in the break room or pass them in the hall. And so I feel like my world has gotten a little bit smaller in that sense. Even when I get on like a Zoom call, I can only see so many faces on the screen at one time. And we've done a lot. We've had a lot of virtual meetings, small ones, big ones. There's a rhythm that we've tried to create. But I am worried about connection, all aspects of connection, and how that the lack of healthy connection can be a drag on culture. So even as we do return to new normal, and we may decide working from home, working virtually is a new tool in the toolkit, we don't want to lose some of the face-to-face, in-person connection that has helped create a culture that's become a strength for us. And I think that would be true for a lot of organizations. So we got to find the balance between both efficiency and connection.
And obviously, I've been a part of the Chick-fil-A culture. You can feel it when you walk into the building. And so trying to figure out how can you do that virtually. Our mutual friends, Brian and Shannon Miles, they've launched a virtual company, Belay. They given some great principles on how to do that. So, but you will eventually be back in the building in some form or fashion, correct?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be fall.
Okay.
So, but we will at some point. And we do have some people that are back. Like we have certain labs. Sometimes you're working on IT stuff and you just got to be on the enterprise network to get it done. So, but you have to be on a list to get back there right now. So we're trying to be really careful and responsible about how we go about that. I'm told when you go, it's one person on the elevator, so get ready to walk the stairs. This flight goes up, that flight goes down. You got bathroom policies. It's a different world.
Yeah. Wow. So in terms of principles and priorities, what else in terms of leading forward in terms of reopening did you think through?
Well, one of the things we had to realize as we sort of restricted some of the resources, we found that there were parts of the business that, at least for a season, we were going to put a pause on. Mm-hmm. And yet there were other parts of the business, they became hotspots, really intense activity. And so one of the things we've had to do is reallocate our staff. We were fortunate we didn't have to lay anybody off or furlough anybody, but what we have had to do is reallocate a lot of people, literally hundreds of people, and ask for a season. And this becomes sort of an ongoing conversation. on how do you define season, but we've been talking about in 30, 90, 120-day increments. We need you, instead of doing X, to come over here and work on Y, because that's where the need is. So it has forced us to become really flexible. We've learned a lot about Agile as a process. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are very familiar with Agile and Scrum as a way to manage projects and get work done. So we've created teams that are very focused on a series of outcomes. They're talking and meeting regularly. You go fast, but then you may get assigned to a different team. So that's a new skill we're learning. I would tell you, if you go back in time, we probably felt like the talent in the organization was owned by departments, and have come to realize that's really not a healthy perspective. The talent belongs to the it doesn't belong to the people leader. It doesn't belong to the department. It belongs to the organization. And so getting a way to move people to where the need is greatest and leverage the talents that folks have, that's a skill we're having to develop.
And that's an ownership mindset to say, hey, if I were the owner of the company, this is what I would do. I would reallocate myself to be over here. Yeah. I thought it was interesting, and our mutual friend Mark Cole with the John Maxwell Company, they've stopped comparing 2020 to 2019 in terms of sales figures. It's just it's self-defeating in so many ways. So you guys, I know, plan years in advance for the upcoming year, but how hard was it to kind of rip up the plan and move on?
Well, it's interesting. I've been in planning meetings even this week, because if planning was always a big exercise, now it feels like we're just doing a lot of it because we have to plan in quarters. So we're in conversations right now about what quarter 4 looks like. And we've just learned how to compress the planning process. So it's intense. It's a little bit like the Agile work we talked about. It's intense, but we're doing it in a much more efficient manner. And I do think all of this forces you to think about what really, really matters. If I'm honest, and we were going through a period where we had a lot of success, we didn't scrutinize things to the degree that we're having to do now. And to some degree, I actually think that's healthy. And if I may, I may even apply it to my own life personally. Nobody wanted this crisis, and undoubtedly it's tragic. I mean, there are people losing their lives. There are people that are becoming sick. And think about just the economic impact on top of that. Nobody wants to be in this crisis, but we're in it. And so if we're in it, I'm figuring, well, let's don't waste it. And so at an organizational level, let's don't waste it. What are the things we can learn and extract from it that inform how we do business going forward? And personally, what do I need to learn as a result of this? So it has actually caused me to go through what I'll call a design exercise. I sat down on my iPad and just tried to list out every area of my life and said, based on what I have learned over the 3 or so months we've been at this thus far, do I want to do things the same way I did before or not? And in some cases, we don't have an option yet, right? But what do I want it to look like? What do I want my calendar to look like? What do I want my commute to look like? What do I want my focus activities to be? I mean, I didn't know what my income was going to be. So we start going through our credit card trying to figure out, do we need that? Do we need that? Can I cancel that? Take that same exercise and apply it to every facet of your life. I think it's actually healthy, and I think it's been healthy for our business as well.
That's great. So in our remaining minutes, anything else you'd share with us in terms of what y'all are doing to prepare for moving into fully reopening?
Well, I feel like we're really fortunate. I think when you go through crisis, you need a Northstar. And so we, as you are well aware, we've always had, at least since 1982, when actually the business went through a different crisis, sort of a financial crisis. Chick-fil-A was growing in a lot of malls back in 1982, but we hit a tough stretch economically. Interest rates went up to 18, 20%. And Truett Cathy, the founder, found himself leveraged and really anxious about whether or not this was going to be the undoing of this fledgling Chick-fil-A regional restaurant chain. And so he called his leaders together, went to Lake Lanier Islands, close by, right? And they had this retreat. And out of that retreat, the most important thing that came out was our corporate purpose. And for us, if you come to Chick-fil-A, it's on this big plaque right as you walk in the front door. It talks about we exist to glorify God by being a faithful steward of everything that's entrusted to us and to have a positive influence on Chick-fil-A. We even have a mission statement as well that talks about how we want to care for people. So that has been a North Star for us. And what I would share is every time we get in decision-making meetings, we filter it all through that purpose and mission. Mm-hmm. So if you're a business leader, I would say, do you feel like you've got the right North Star? Mm-hmm. And perhaps this crisis has just confirmed the fact that you do. And you realize it's on point, and we just need to continue to use this to help give direction to where we go coming out of this. But maybe it's exposed the fact that you don't. Yeah. And so this might be a great time just to kind of bring leadership together and talk. All right, what do we want our focus to be? What is going to ultimately be our purpose and mission as we emerge from this? Because one of the things that's really clear, I see a lot of data. One of the things that, as I've done this work, the whole world is talking about this. So I get more data from consulting firms now than ever before because the focus, everybody's got this focus. And one of the things that's clear is customers or consumers expect businesses to do more than make profits. They expect businesses to be really responsible members of their community and to elevate their care for the customers and not just see them as a way to continue to meet revenue goals and generate profits for the business. So maybe there's a need to do a little bit of a pivot on your own North Star, but that's been really, really important for us.
And that's why I tell business leaders, if you can, I've been on both sides, business world, church world. Over here, you have the for-profit world, you have the nonprofit world over here, purpose. So it's as if, you got profit over here, but you can't have purpose over here. But in today's world, if you can combine a really good purpose with a compelling product, that's the ballgame. And I think customers will respond to that because it's not just about the product anymore.
Well, if anybody knows that, it's the man who wrote the book, Know What You're For. So this is a great time to just do an audit on what are you for?
Yeah. Well, David, final question. As you look toward the second half of the year, from your perspective, give us a perspective. You think sales are going to go up? What are you sensing in terms of business in the second half of the year?
Well, I think people are really anxious to get back to normal. That's one of the clear trends we see. So that bodes well for businesses. A lot of the data I've seen will indicate it depends on what kind of business you're in. Probably the thing people are most scared of is really large group, dense gatherings. They miss sporting events, they miss concerts, but there's probably a little more apprehension around that versus even going into a restaurant, having a meal inside a restaurant. Yeah. I will also tell you, they run everything through a lens of safety, cleanliness, hygiene. We found in our own business, it's always been taste of food trumps everything else, any other decision criteria. That's not true right now. Their confidence in your ability to provide a safe experience trumps everything, including for us, taste of food.
Yeah, wow.
So that's first. But as you think about getting back to normal, we do acknowledge that there's a risk that we got into it fast. We don't think we're going to get out of it fast. Mm-hmm. There could be a recurrence. And so it could be a bumpy road until we get to a point where we've got a vaccination. So I think we are seeing in our business, we are moving in a good direction. But I was in conversations today, even as we work on this fourth quarter plan, part of our planning has to assume there's a scenario where things get worse again. We hope that's not true. We don't know that that's true. But I think if you're prudent, you have to at least prepare that could be true. There's just so much unknown about this virus.
Wow. Well, man, first, it's great to see you again. Thanks for helping us letting us in on the little insights. I guess any new product development's been kind of stopped. Is that right?
Well, you do have to change what you talk about and how you talk about things. And so we had some things that we were going to do that were sort of seasonal and fun. We pulled back on that. There are some things we actually accelerated. We did meal kits. We brought meal kits back. If you want to go to Chick-fil-A, you can get a chicken parm meal kit for about $15. Feeds two. You take it home and you prepare it. We kind of give you everything you need. We are launching bottled sauces through grocery stores and now restaurants. Yeah. So if you like Chick-fil-A sauce or Polynesian sauce, pretty soon those will be things you can get your hands on. But we cut back on other things because they didn't seem as relevant. But we're about to start that back up. And so when we get to the fall, we got a couple little things that we'll get to introduce. And I think at that point in time, people will be ready for something refreshing. I'll tell you one little anecdote, if I may, as we wrap up. On the other side of Atlanta, down in the Fayetteville area, Truett Cathy, before he passed away a few years ago, his hobby was building restaurants. And he decided when he was 90 years old that he wanted to open a restaurant that was a Hawaiian-themed chicken restaurant.
I've been there.
There was not a huge market for it, but he decided that's what he wanted to do. And so he decided it's going to be called Truett's Luau. And he went about on his own, doing research. He worked on the uniforms, the menu, everything, the utensils, all of it. And his son, Dan Cathy, who leads the business, would say, whatever Dad asked for, just do it. Because it kept him going. It gave him energy. So he opened Truett's Luau. We're all trying to figure out, what is this? But a young lady about a week and a half ago down in Peachtree City did a simple TikTok video on things about Peachtree City. And she has a charming personality. She highlighted Truett's Luau and created a social media storm to the point that people so craving something different got in their car, drove hours, and in some cases would sit in a drive-through line for up to 4 hours to go through and have some of the unique items you can get at Truett's Luau: sweet potato fries, fish tacos, things you don't get at a regular Chick-fil-A. And I tell that story because it illustrates the fact that people are craving, want a little bit of sense of normal and a little twist. They're tired of the same old right now. We've had a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches lately. So if think about your own business. What do you have that people can't wait to get a taste of again? What are they craving for? And how do you dress that up to make it really appealing?
I wasn't aware of the TikTok video. I am aware of the white macadamia nut milkshake that's only available at Truett's Luau, which is phenomenal and might be worth a 4-hour wait in the drive-through. Well, Dave, thanks, man. Tell Mallory and everybody, hey, and we're cheering you on. And thanks for allowing us to get better. We really appreciate it.
I can't wait to get back up to Gwinnett County, get to minor league Braves game, get to Gwinnett Church. So I'll be there.
Yeah, David's nephew, Drew Waters, is big-time player at the Gwinnett, used to be Braves, now it's Gwinnett Stripers. So we need baseball to get back. Any update on Drew on baseball?
I was actually with him this weekend, and I think minor league, they're just kind of hanging around waiting to know. But I think MLB really wants to figure out how to get something cranked back up. He's just training every day, hoping that they get out and play soon. So I know that'll be great for Gwinnett, up at Coolray Park. Good from all of Georgia right down the road. So we all want that.
Cole and I went to a game with David to see Drew play. We got rained out. So we're still yet to have seen Drew play. So
you need to cash in your rain check.
That's right. Well, grateful for David and grateful for you all watching today. If this is your first time watching anything with Gwinnett Church, we hope that this is a value add. We have other Gwinnett Business Breakfasts that feature a lot of different leaders. And we're just hoping that we really do believe in the business community. We believe that one of the ways you help a community get better is to help the business community get better. We hope that this has been a helpful time for you. If you have any other questions about that, you can just email us at info@gwinnettchurch.org. And so grateful for you being here. So we're for you. David, eat more chicken. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, I'm so grateful for David joining us, and I know you found that helpful. And just as a reminder, our team has done some work for you. They've compiled the notes as an overview. And so one of the things I would encourage you to do as you think about how do I lead in this virtual season. I know many of us are starting to get back into the office, but here's an idea for you. Have everyone on your team watch this business breakfast and then send them the notes, and then you begin to dialogue and ask some questions such as, hey, based on what Chick-fil-A is doing, based on what we learned from David, how could we apply that to our organization? So to get those notes, you just text GC Breakfast to 313131. GC Breakfast to 313131. And again, just a reminder of why we're doing this. We really do believe that one of the ways that we can help create and continue to create a thriving community in Gwinnett and beyond is to help business leaders. Every community needs to have thriving businesses and thriving business leaders. So we hope this conversation and the other ones that we've had and the ones that we're going to bring to you in the future will help you, because we are certainly for you. So thanks for watching today, and we'll see you at the next Gwinnett Business Breakfast.